Okay, this is a Grouting 101 lesson with a mirror piece that was mosaiced, and we're going to show you how easy it is to do this. Okay, starting out with Polyblend sanded tile grout that you can get at Home Depot. We use sanded grout, not the unsanded. It comes in a lot of different colors. Neutrals are the easiest to get there. If you need special colors, you need to order them. It comes in little boxes like this, and it comes in bigger bags, and it's quite economical. Okay, I'm going to use a color called Bone, and you just need a little bucket like this, and a spoon, and I put the dry ingredients in first, into the bucket. Okay, and I do this very by feel. I know, that some people have like measurements of parts to water and all that, but I just do it by feel so that you'll, no matter what size project you do, you'll be able to figure out what the right, what you're trying to achieve is a certain, what's the word that I'm looking for? Texture, okay? Consistency. That's the word. Looking for a certain consistency. Okay, then you can get these latex-free gloves from Smart & Final, and you want to wear these because this is cement. You don't want to get your hands all yucked up with it. And then what I do is I pour a little bit at a time. I start putting the water in and just get it slightly wet. It's going to be probably kind of slightly lumpy texture, as you can see here. It actually almost is exactly what we're looking for. Try and pour in a little bit at a time so I can gradually get the right consistency. But in this case, I guessed really good. The consistency you want is when you hold it together in your hands, it's like sand, wet sand. You just don't want it too moist or too dry. If it's crumbly, then you add a little bit more water. If it ends up being too liquidy, then just add a little more grout. Okay, now we're going to take some of the grout, okay, and just put it on the top of the mosaic pieces, and you use your hand like a trowel. You put it on and you move it across the pieces back and forth very easily, and it'll just naturally fill in all of the areas. You don't want to leave a lot on the surface. You don't want to pat it. You just want to put it down and move it across. And by doing that, you'll fill in all of the areas. See how I'm just like taking it, and it's there's some kind of on the bottom of my glove here, and I'm just keep smoothing it across the surface. Okay, I don't worry about the sides so much yet, or the edges, until I get all of it filled in. It's really very, very easy to do. As you can see, I'm not like spending too much time in any one area because it's just all filling in. After we finish putting in all the grout like this, then we'll be taking a sponge and sponging off the surface, and that takes a little bit more time. So it's really just a very simple, easy process. And you don't want to like you want to put enough pressure just to move it across, but not too much pressure. Be careful of some of the rough edges, because like we're using glass here, and sometimes it might get caught on the ends of the gloves, and you might need another pair of gloves to finish. Okay, so see how quickly I'm just like moving it across, moving my hands back and forth, which causes it to end up going in between the little gaps. And you can go back and and see if there's any places that you missed, like here. I'm gonna go back and just make sure that I got all of these gaps. But once you start sponging, that also fills it in really nicely too. So it's it's just a process that you learn. I've been doing this a long time, so you know it's really very simple to me. You know, I know exactly what to expect, so that's a good thing. If you actually don't mix enough grout, you can actually go back and mix more, especially if it's, you know, just out of the box like this. And you have about 20 minutes at least, you know, before it really sets up. Maybe even a little bit longer than that. And it takes maybe 3 or 4 hours to dry completely. So now I'm just going back over the edges here, edges of the mirror, and putting a little bit of grout on there and using my index finger to just kind of smooth it in to the joints. These little gaps here on the edge of the mirror. So this whole process really is very quick. And now we'll just get this on edge here. Usually beginners have a little bit of trouble with the edges too. I'm doing this really quickly because I'm used to it. Now just smooth off any excess grout, because it just makes it easier to clean it when you go to the sponging part. And I suppose the sponging part it's also easy, but it does take some practice to understand just what the right amount of pressure is to use. So these sponges you can get at Home Depot also. I get big ones and then just like cut them into smaller pieces, especially for like small projects like this. You don't need so much. I'm also taking like some of the grout that's right here in front of me and going around the edge of the inner part of the mirror here, which with a little bit of grout you can get a nice clean edge. And once we take the tape off, we'll be able to clean it a little better as well. So it doesn't have to be all done so perfectly at once. I'm just getting as much done as I can in one swoop. Okay, so now I'm going to take the sponge and dip it in the water, and this is important that you just squeeze out all the excess water. You just want just a little bit of a damp sponge, not too wet, okay? Because we want to get the grout off of here, and we don't want to get the grout really wetter. We just want to be able to rub it off. Now I take the sponge and put some pressure, push down, and then push across the surface of the mirror. I get almost, I would say I probably get all the way now to the end of the mirror and just stop. And you can see how much just like really cleaned off right there. Now I'll take the sponge and clean it out again, just rinse it out really well, and then go to the next just area right next to where I was and do the exact same thing. Put some pressure and pull and kind of pull the sponge across the surface. You don't want to go back and forth across the surface because that just makes it like the sand going back and forth, and you don't get like a really clean surface that way. That is also something that a lot of people when they first start with have challenges with, is getting a really nice clean movement, efficient movement of the sponge across the surface. So I'm going to show you again. Push down and go slowly across the top of the surface, and see how nice it really just cleans. Here I just had to turn the sponge a little bit because I was starting to see that it was not going to move off as well. So I wanted to get a clean part of the sponge to do that. Okay. Now I'm going to turn this mirror once more and go again here. You don't keep going back over the same area, you just go once. If you can do it once, that's great. Sometimes you might have to do it once or twice to get this kind of a clean surface as a beginner. So I'm going to wipe it off again. And then rinse the sponge again. There's a little area here I'm going to go on the edge and wipe off. But see how easy it just like really is supposed to be. Sometimes people just make it more complicated when they don't really know what the process is. So now this last area, I'm going to do the same thing again. Just you can see the amount of pressure I think that I'm putting on here. Turn the sponge and take this last area off here. Okay, and voila! You basically have the whole thing done. I'm going to do a little bit more cleaning. The thing also that you need to learn about is how the cleaning process takes maybe 2 or 3 times of cleaning, because there's a thing called grout haze that comes over the top. You don't see it right after you use the sponge, but it'll look like kind of a foggy mist on top of where you just cleaned off. That's very normal. You just have to do that maybe 2 or 3 times of cleaning, letting it dry slightly in between those times that you use the sponge, because you don't, again, you're trying to get it to dry out. You don't want to keep this grout that wet, because then it keeps on moving across the surface of the mirror. Okay, now I'm going to take the sponge and just like go on this area, the inner part, and I think you'll see more clearly what I'm talking about with the grout haze in a moment. It's maybe a little hard to see right now, but if you were here, you could see that the surface is getting a little bit dull. And again, that's kind of normal. That's definitely normal, I mean. Okay. Oops. Wrong sponge. Now I'm going to take the sponge and clean off the edges of the mirror. You can see how like this grout is not supposed to stay on there. You just take the edge of your sponge and go down very nice and smooth down one edge at a time and clean off this edge. Now you can, if you'd like, actually paint this edge with acrylic paint. That's your choice. Once this is dry, you see I'm just cleaning off, again, just cleaning off the excess grout here. And voila! You have almost a completely done mirror. After you're completely done and this is dry, and you see that you've wiped it off several times just with a damp sponge, in various intervals, you can use white vinegar, just plain white vinegar. It doesn't have to be diluted. Just use a little bit on a towel or a old t-shirt, and you can wipe off the surface of the glass, and it'll restore more of the luster and the natural shine of the glass. Okay, so now we're going to just like take this tape off of the mirror just so that you can see again, what I'm doing. Just removing the tape, and also whatever little bit of grout pieces are caught in there. You do this really just so that the grout doesn't get onto the mirror while you're doing the grouting. As you can imagine, it would make it just kind of a bigger mess. And I just take my sponge and just clean up the edges here of the inside part of the mirror. And that's it. You have a finished grouted